separating the art from the artist. That's what's coming up on The Art of Bombing, episode 156.
My friend Dan, he's got a podcast, 'cause all comics need a podcast, and nobody had a podcast called The Art of Bombing. So Dan went out and bought a tape deck. Who knows why he bought a tape deck? Podcasts don't get played on tape decks, but Dan is from the 80s. So hey there, all you funny jerks, come talk to Dan about your work. Tell him all about your worst times. It's The Art of Bombing.
Welcome to a brand new episode of The Art of Bombing. I'm Dan Bublitz Jr. here with you on Tuesday, August 25th, 2020. I hope everybody had a fantastic week, and I hope you enjoyed last week's episode with Coco Briscoe. Today on the show, I have a great comic. Jonesy was my guest. He had a fantastic story about bombing on an island. And we had a pretty in-depth conversation about separating the art from the artist. And, it's going to be a great conversation. So that's what's coming up on the show today. A couple things to promote real quick. Stand-up. I've got some virtual comedy coming up on Thursday, August 27th. I will be doing a Zoom show. It's a free show. My cousin is actually sponsoring the show. It's free. If you'd like to go, hit me up on Facebook. Hit us up on the Facebook page, and we'll get you the Zoom room meeting ID and all the information you need to come see a fantastic, fun, free virtual comedy show. The show's got comics from all across the country. It's a showcase-style show, and it's going to be a good time. So if you want to come to that, just hit me up. Like I said, hit me up on the old Facebook page. As far as the podcast goes, if you haven't done so already, you know the drill. You know what I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask that you subscribe to the podcast, and I'm going to ask, if you haven't done so already, that you leave us a 5-star rating and perhaps leave a review. Say some nice words on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to this podcast. I would greatly appreciate that if you did that. I was able to get some stand-up from Jonesy, so we're going to go back to that as far as before I go into the conversation. You'll get a little taste of his comedy, and then we're going to go into that great conversation with him. So if you haven't done so already, make sure you follow us on all our social media. Go to the website, artofbombingpod.com, for everything else. And I think that's going to do it for today. So here's my conversation with Jonesy. Enjoy.
Anybody else got the nut allergy? This dumbass disease? This is ridiculous. They should cure this shit, right? I'm supposed to believe this is incurable? Get out of here. We have the most amazing science these days, right? We got self-driving cars. We're all talking about traveling to Mars. Yet a man can be killed by trail mix. It makes no sense. They could obviously cure it if they felt like it, but nobody gives a shit. Yeah, no one cares about the nut allergy. It's true. Now, there's no fundraisers for me. There's no walk for nuts. No one's wearing like a little black ribbon because I can't enjoy Nutella. No one. I want to enjoy Nutella. On a banana? You out of your mind? This shit looks amazing. Unbelievable. I wouldn't care if I was allergic to something that didn't seem so delicious. Like, I wouldn't care if I was allergic to something I never wanted to eat. Like, I don't know, like the top of the pineapple. Who gives a shit? I don't want to eat that thing. Looks like it hurts inside my mouth, if we're being honest. That's pretty cool, though. Yeah. They don't got much for me, really. The EpiPen, have you seen that piece of crap? Yeah, the doctor says, next time you eat a nut, right, stab yourself in the ass or the upper thigh with this needle. I'm like, this is it? Like, hey, doc, you got any medicine that when I take it, it doesn't require me to pull down my pants at Panera? It'd be pretty sweet if I could keep my pants on while I'm saving my life. And I got to keep that pen on me at all times, that EpiPen? That's attractive, huh, ladies? Yeah, I want to fuck the guy with the EpiPen, said no one.
So now, before as COVID and everything, the whole pandemic and everything was starting, you were touring China. Is that right?
No, not China. I was in Japan.
Oh, you were in Japan. Okay.
Malaysia, Singapore, and Taiwan.
So pretty much everywhere but China over there.
Yeah, pretty much everywhere but China.
So you were touring Asia.
Yeah, I was. China was never on my hit list, thank God. I was going to build up to that, you know. Yeah, so thankfully, no, that wasn't, not a destination. I got close.
Yeah, well, even being over there, I imagine with it kind of all going down, you know, and being around that had to be kind of intense. I mean, did you ever feel like you were going to get stuck over there? Like, was that like a thought?
No, I never thought I would be stuck. I knew that the United States would let me in. I just didn't think that they would let me in so easily. You know, they never took my temperature. No. I mean, it's like, hello, look at my passport, you idiots. I came from Japan, Malaysia. I mean, come on, you're not even going to take my temperature? You're out of your mind. You know, so
I know it's harder to get into some restaurants now.
Yeah, than to fly in. They didn't even have me fill out a health survey. They didn't even scrutinize the passport to see every other country I entered, it was temperature, sometimes twice, fill out a health survey. Let me see your passport. Have you been to China within the last 3 weeks? You know, they were asking you all. Yep. They were very concerned. The U.S. was just like, hey, welcome back. Where were you? All over Asia? 6 weeks in Asia? Come on in, buddy. Yeah, spit on me. Just spit on me. Just ridiculous.
Oh, my God, that's funny. But no, I'm not surprised by that at all. Not at all.
You see, look, they had no, you know, there was no guidelines. They had, you know, the protocol was lax. They just don't give a shit. They didn't give a shit. And they still don't really, I mean.
I know. It's like, it's so weird to see how, you know, like you're in a country. We have all, you know, we have like federal, state, and like county, you know, governments, and you don't think nothing about them. And then this happens, and suddenly it's like every county and every state for itself. And it doesn't even feel like we're like a country anymore, in the sense that there's no federal standard. It's just kind of just depends on where you're at. You know, it's very state to state. And then some of the states, it's very county to county or city to city.
I mean, I live in Southern California, as you know, and, you know, the difference between Los Angeles County and Orange County is night and day. Orange County, I don't know, half of these people that live in Orange County think that this is a hoax. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like, you are out of your mind, man. Out of your mind.
No, absolutely. It's definitely weird. Like where I'm at, Minnesota's taking it a lot more serious, but like I'm from South Dakota, which is just like across the border from Minnesota, and they don't give it. I mean, right now there's a motorcycle rally with over 200,000 people that have gathered, and they're like, "Yeah, we're proud to do this." You know,
200,000 people.
Yeah, over 200,000 people. Yeah, the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally.
Oh, this is the same place that Smash Mouth just had a concert.
Yes. Yep.
That's there in South Dakota? I had no idea where that was.
Yeah,
yep. 200,000 people? Wow.
Yeah, that's what they're estimating. Yep.
This is outrageous, you know.
It is.
And I mean, depending on what state you live in, I mean, schools are supposed to start up. I mean, you're going to send kids to school? How? How are you sending kids to school? Kids are the biggest carriers of viruses and germs that we have. I mean, anybody who knows about flu season knows if you got kids around you, you're getting that shit. I mean, I don't know how you're going to, you know, I care about the kids' lives as well, obviously, but like, you know. It's just like, you can't let this happen, man. I mean, I don't get it. And each state, like you said, is different. It's like they're their own sovereign nation when it comes to this bullshit. So you got to hope and pray that you have a governor that has half a brain, or otherwise you're like, oh, geez, my governor is. Oh, I live in Florida, and this is the governor I got. I guess I need to write my will. You know?
Yeah, that's about right. It really is that way. It's like, I've only been living up here in Minnesota now for just over a year. Like, I just moved here last April of 2019. And I'm like, oh man, I'm so glad I moved here because they're taking it serious. And, the governor in South Dakota, where I was living previously, doesn't care at all. She's like pushing for schools to open up with no mask mandates or anything. It's just so unreal to me. But,
yeah, and I mean, I was in a unique position to see these Asian countries deal with it from the get-go. I mean, I arrived in Taipei on February 9th, and at the time there was only 18 reported cases and 1 death. And I mean, despite that, my temperature's taken at the border. My passport is looked at. They want to know if I've been in China. They're already like, scrutinizing me, and I'm a white guy. I'm like, I'm not even an Asian dude. I'm an American, and they're still like, they want to know where I've been. They want to know. I mean, I'm talking 18 cases, and I had to wear a mask before I went into a bakery. They were already doing shit like that. 18 cases, and there were stores that would take your temperature before they let you in the store. 18 cases in the whole country, and get in certain stores, they had to take my temperature, and I had to pass the temperature gauge to get in the store.
Yeah.
18 cases.
Wow. That's crazy.
Imagine.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, that just goes to show you, like, we're really lacking. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of cases, and people are like, I don't want to wear a mask anywhere,
Yeah,
it's my right not to wear it.
There was, there had to be, there was hundreds of thousands of cases before 7-Eleven was like, hey, everybody, wear a mask when you come in here.
Yeah.
In the U.S. I mean, it's like night and day, the way that the response, and in their defense, okay, they have a country that's where it's very, very, there's very little diversity, and the government's pretty on top of shit. They have a smaller population, so it's easy for them to agree to get along and to work together and to cooperate. Also, they recently had SARS, so they all got masks in their underwear drawers, ready to go, I assume.
Yeah,
and they all know what it's like. This is a protocol that they've been through before. Oh, I'm going to be on the subway today. I better bring my mask. And I better be open to getting my temperature taken when I go into the hot pot restaurant or whatever. And I'm cool with that. They're kind of prepared for such things. Yet still, I mean, I'm in a country where not only can we not all agree to wear masks, we can't all even agree that this virus is actually a reality. There is the balkanization of epistemology that surrounds this fucking virus is outrageous. You got people believing that it's a total scam, it's a hoax. You got other people believing that this is a conspiracy behind it. I mean, just a whole range of ideas surrounding this prevents cooperation, unfortunately.
Oh, absolutely. No, I totally agree. And it's crazy to me. Like, every time I see somebody that basically calls this a hoax, I'm like, or they're like, oh, this is just some big conspiracy to get Trump out of the Oval Office or whatever. I'm like, how did they get the whole rest of the world on board with this? Like, do you not think about how dumb that sounds? Yeah. The whole world is going through this.
Yeah, Brazil is like, yeah, sure. You know what? We're going to take it on the chin.
Yeah, exactly.
To just push this agenda forward. I mean, that's just outrageous. Did you happen to catch the clip of the guy in Sprouts in Arizona? Was it this morning or yesterday, where he had to be carried out? He had to be carried out by his son. I mean, this guy is just going.
Oh my God.
He was yelling. He's in the middle of the Sprouts yelling, Don't you all know this is a hoax? Don't let them mislead you. It's like, wow. And then the son's got to be like, Dad, come on. And then actually pick him up and carry him out like a whining baby. It's like, it's a tremendous clip. But he is saying those words. This is a hoax. You guys have all been duped. It's like, you're in Arizona saying that? You know the fucking deaths in Arizona? Like the level of deaths in Arizona that we've had, like the cases. How? I mean, in your world, you don't know anybody that's got it? What do you think, they're lying? What do you think, your coworker's lying about it? Yeah, Jerry called in sick, says he's got that thing.
He just wanted 3 weeks off of work.
Exactly. Yeah, he's watching that Jordan documentary probably. He don't want to come in. Come on, bro. Come on. You're in the middle of shit in Arizona, and you still think it's a hoax? I mean, I don't understand. You live in a basement? Like, how? Like, it's fucking unreal.
It really is. It's just crazy how people, and I think I've had a couple different conversations with different people about this, but I think it's like these people that are going into places and refusing to wear masks and throwing the fits and throwing the tantrums. I really think it's a weird way to feed their own narcissistic like agenda that's how they're like, I'm going to get my 15 minutes of fame. And to me, this is funny. Now I can go laugh with my friends and be like, did you see what I did? I was such an asshole, but I'm viral now. And it's like, of all the things you could be famous for, why this?
I mean, how are you going to get a job after this, bro? I mean, how? Are you going to
Yep.
You're gonna get a job. You know, it's
how you
unbelievable.
gonna keep your job. You know, if you have a job, right?
You're gonna apply to be a welder after refusing to wear a mask in front of 10 million people on Twitter. It's like, yeah, we require our welders to wear safety goggles, sir. And you seem like you don't even want to wear a mask, you dumbass. I mean, that's a stretch for a joke there, but I mean, you get it.
No, I get it. I come from a very blue collar family, so I understand welding.
The face cover. Oh God. Yeah, I mean, it's like a neck tattoo. I mean, you go viral in the bad way. It's like having a neck tattoo, man. No, I mean, people. You know, how you gonna? People don't want to hang out with you after that. People don't want to hire you after that. But you know, they're like, here we go, another Karen, as they call these people. I feel bad for anyone named Karen. But it was a bad year for anyone named Karen.
Oh, it really is. There's a comedian here in the Twin Cities named Karen, and she is an absolute sweetheart. And it's like,
the poor girl.
We all feel so bad for her because
we ought to I cover weird news on my podcast, Weird AF News, and I covered a story in Australia. In one city in Australia, Domino's gave out free pizzas to anyone named Karen. They just brought it to your house if your name was Karen because they felt so goddamn bad. Is that amazing?
Yeah. Although I feel like in America that would bankrupt Domino's.
Yeah, that totally would. It absolutely would. It's unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, how many Karens are in Melbourne? Like 4, like if that. Yeah, in America, right. They would totally bankrupt. Yeah, it's a rough year for the Karens of the world. I mean,
it really is. Oh man, wow. So when you were over there, how was that like performing comedy over there? Because I know I've interviewed some people that are from Asia and did comedy both there and over here, and both in their language and English. I imagine doing the English, because I assume you're doing English. I guess that's an assumption. Yeah. English shows. How is that in comparison from doing shows in the U.S. versus, a country like that? Do you end up, are you able to use a lot of your same kind of references, or how do you,
Sure.
Get the...
I assume your audience likes it when you geek out on stand-up specific stuff. Seeing the guests that you've had on here and listening to a couple episodes, it's so to get very specific. It's like, I got some jokes that are universal. I got some bits that are not universal. Like I got a jury duty bit. I got an Amber Alert bit. These jokes aren't going to fly over there. They don't have jury duty. They don't know what the fucking Amber Alert is. So then I got some universal jokes. I talk about being short. I talk about having a nut allergy. Now, having a nut allergy is really a U.S. centric thing. I mean, it's really mostly But I use that as a jumping off point for the bit as well. I'm like, you guys might have heard of this nut allergy. You're probably like, is it a hoax? Does it really exist? Is it a fantasy? No, it does exist only in America, apparently. And so it's like everywhere in Asia, I'm asking waiters, are there nuts in this? And they're like, who cares? Just fucking eat it, Like there isn't a nuts allergy sensitivity anywhere else, I don't think, other than the U.S., thankfully for me. So that's a bit that works as well. But, a lot of my material, I discovered right away that it wasn't happening. Luckily, I was in Singapore, which was my home base for the time that I was there. I was staying with a family, and I was there for a long, weeks, 2.5, 3 weeks before I went to headline Malaysia. And during that time, I did about a dozen shows or more. I hit up the comedy club there. They do have one, and they have some independent shows as well. And I was just getting as much stage time as I could there, even doing the open mics, which the open mics were outstanding there. There was one open mic night. It was 100 people, standing room. I mean, unbelievable. Wow. The open mic, to go to an open mic over there, I was like, wow, they really like their comedy. So I was able to develop some Asian specific bits about my experience over there being an American. And I was able to, in a span of a couple of weeks, put together about 10 to 15 minutes of new material all about my experience in Asia. And so then I was able to bring that into the act. Between that and the jokes that did work and a little crowd work, because I had to build myself up to 45 minutes or so before I was headlining Malaysia. And so I was able to do that in Singapore. And I ended up using those jokes everywhere, in Taiwan and in Japan as well. Those jokes I wrote about Asia, very helpful, very helpful. I took the time and gave a shit and worked my ass off, and was getting up every night in Singapore to do it. And it worked out. So yeah, to answer your question, it's regions are very specific. You could even, I've had situations where I can't do the same jokes in Southern California that I would do in, Southern Nevada,
Yep.
Or I've been to, you go to a place in Arizona where I did a show at a bar in Arizona, which is next to an off-track betting place, next to a church, next to a gun shop. That's the corner. Off-track betting, church, gun shop. Now, your anti-Trump material, first of all, ain't going to fly here. Are we all clear? That's number one.
Yep.
In addition to that, there's just a different mindset. And some of my shit, I can't even do at a place like that. I got to pivot, we are we're becoming, it's very tribal, these regions, you go. You mentioned earlier, just as an example, perfect example, the difference in the way that entire states look at a pandemic and judge it and operate on that judgment. People are not walking around with the same reality tunnel, unfortunately. And so as a comic, you just you have to have enough material. I got over an hour of material, and you just got to have enough to pivot wherever you go. And I always recommend, to watch the comic before you get a little bit of information about where you are when you're traveling. If you've never been there before. And so you know what you're getting into, and, or don't, or if you don't give a shit, you can find out on stage. I've been doing it a long time. And if I fuck up on stage, I hit the wrong button on them, I can get myself out of it. I can dig myself out of it usually. But, it's helpful to know going in, and just maybe save yourself that little headache if you do material that you don't think that'll fly there. Oh, I do an abortion joke or whatever the hell that you do. And these people love abortion. And so maybe you don't do it there. Or, so Asia, as you can imagine, same thing. But you do comedy long enough, you kind of prepare for that. That audiences are different, even across state borders, or even
neighborhoods. Oh, absolutely.
Sometimes neighborhoods. I did comedy for 10 years in New York City, and when I'm in Manhattan, it's predominantly a tourist crowd. But when I go to Brooklyn, it's a little hipster joint, and I'm gonna have to. I gotta pivot and do my some hipster material, stuff that's a little more cerebral. Maybe don't be so energetic. Don't do any act outs. Don't do any tags. Don't do any blatant setup and punchlines. They just don't like that shit. You got to kind of work it. If you want to give them give them a little something that they want. If you have the ability to write various kinds of jokes, which I think is fun to challenge yourself to do such things, then you can work those out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I experienced myself just in the different regions, like going from I lived in California for a while, and I would come back to the Midwest to do comedy and stuff. And even some of the stuff that I would do in California didn't necessarily go, fly over here because it's more conservative versus, more liberal. And then, like
Correct.
you said, even, you get into even different towns or neighborhoods, especially in bigger cities, them different crowds. So, yeah, I just always find it fascinating for different countries, though, because it's like comedy it's such a universal, like people across the world love comedy. Like it's the one thing that can bring all types of people together. So it's always interesting to see what works and what doesn't in the different parts of the world.
Well, also then, you might find this. We can geek out on this for a second too. There's also certain regions of the world have some of them have a very oppressive government, or not an oppressive government, but a government that's kind of like,
Yep.
Singapore is one of these places. I'm using this. My impression of doing comedy in Singapore was, wow, holy shit, your government, your government's watching you. It was almost as though they didn't feel permitted to even laugh at certain things. Like I talk about drugs and sex. Now, this is this community, this country, Singapore, chewing gum was illegal there for a very long time because they want to keep the streets so clean. The fines that surround, you can be fined for public displays of affection. The fines that surround littering, the imprisonment that goes with being caught with marijuana. I mean, very strict drug laws. The behavior there is very strict. They were very, to talk about sex, I could feel it in the room. They're uncomfortable, and I'm not a raunchy person by any means. And yet I could feel it. Talking about marijuana with them, I could just feel them tense up, and it's so there are places in the world that are like that. And that was crazy to be performing in a place like that. I had a lot of fun with it. I really pushed the boundary with them too. Once I learned what was going on, I said, oh, could be fun. Very rarely do I do shows in front of crowds like that. You go to a comedy show in the US, everybody expects you to talk about sex, expects you to talk about drugs. This was like, they couldn't handle it, man. It was like so taboo that and I did a whole bit on, because there's no crime there. And I'm just like, wow, your police force must be the biggest pussies of all police forces in the world. They got to be the biggest pussies. And they're just like, whoa. And it's like, I've seen your little police officers, those cute little men. They look like gay bartenders. I'm not afraid. I'm like, I could come here dressed like a hockey goalie and just take over this fucking town. And they just were like, they couldn't handle it. They just were like, what is going on? Is he really saying these things? They had never heard such things and seen that kind of behavior, So I had some fun with it, but you see the difference there. You see very tight. Those crowds were tight. I do those same bits in Malaysia, which is the neighboring country. They're a poorer country. The government's a little looser. They're more working class types, The Malaysians are the blue collar workers that go to Singapore and do the construction, or they're the housekeepers that work in Singapore, Whereas Singapore is this pristine, very safe, clean, everybody's rich and everybody obeys. So Malaysia is opposite. So then I just crossed the border there, and now I can fuck around and do the things that I did in Singapore. And they're like, yeah, sex, drugs, this is great. We want to hear this, And then I could even make fun of the stuffy. I'm like, and I made fun of the people in Singapore. I'm like, wow, you guys are laughing at this bit? Oh man, I did it in Singapore. I almost got arrested. So these little differences of the country and what they'll permit, depending on how overbearing the government is. I think that's a better phrase for it. Overbearing. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's you just kind of. Something that came up, where you said you almost got arrested as a joke, but did you ever feel like that could have been a possibility in some of the countries where, you are pushing the boundaries, like, because like censorship used to be a big deal in America, even, and of course, we've loosened up, and people pretty much say whatever they want now. Sure. But like you said, over there, governments are a little more overbearing, and I wonder how that would feel.
I mean, we all know the stories of, and your listeners are huge fans of comedy. I'm sure they're familiar with Lenny Bruce's story. And so this was a man who was pretty much completely destroyed as a human being because of censorship. You could argue, drug overdose, but the guy's suffering. The guy is, being arrested in the middle of a show, and not allowed to do his art and not allowed to express himself. And this will drive an individual mad. And we've come a long way, obviously, now, but I think some of these countries still lack. Of all the countries, Singapore, of course, was the one where I looked back on it and I thought to myself, I could have, if I said certain things about the government, I probably, and word got out. Let's say I went viral. I don't know how that would happen, but let's say I don't know. Imagine a scene where I'm speaking very ill of the government. And I only spoke a little bit ill of the government, just a little bit.
But sometimes all it takes is one sound bite.
Right? So like if something goes viral, what could have happened? Could I have been caned in public? I don't know. I mean, they seem to arrest you for less. I mean, if we're talking China, if you're talking China, I mean, it's a fact that China doesn't allow such things. China is one of these places where you cannot speak freely about the government. Hong Kong is now a place where you cannot freely speak about the government. So, it's stand-up comedy in places like that. I don't know how that even works, to be honest with you. But yeah, in Singapore, I did think afterward, hey, if I had really pushed it, it could have been something. I don't know what, but possibility.
Yeah, that's a scary thing to think about. It's like, this could have ended my tour right here.
For sure.
Glad it didn't, but well, we'll get into, I always like to have my guests talk about a time when they felt like they bombed to tell a story of a bad show. So let's go ahead and we'll go into that.
I sent you a link to a story. I wrote about this on Medium, and so maybe you could, if you want to post a link to it, if people want to read the story in the show notes or something.
Yep, I'll do that.
The situation was I didn't know my crowd. This happens. Also, I was under a year in. It was a long time ago in Boston. I was very young, college age, and a headliner was like, I'm going to do a college show, and you'd be perfect to open for me. You're a young guy, your material. At the time, I was a guitar comic, and I was playing all these funny songs, funny, dirty songs, and young people just ate them up. They just fucking ate them up. Like they were so dumb, dude, so dumb. I cringe to think, Dan, of the of the lyrics and the song, just the song titles. I mean, I cringe to think. So, I agreed to go. The show didn't take place on a college campus. The show was on an island off the coast of New England, a small island that was private that a college rented for a senior week event. I don't know, senior week in college, there's like a whole week of events for the seniors before they bounce. And they pull out the wallet and they'll get you, maybe they'll take you to a baseball game one day. Maybe they'll have barbecue on campus the next day. Just these events for the seniors. Well, this school it was like a wealthy school. So they rented this small island for the seniors to go. And when you got to the island, there was all these various areas of the island that you could go for various entertainment, and they had tents. So you had the comedy tent, the magician tent. You had the beer pong tent. You had the beer dye tent. You had like the hip hop tent, the techno tent. All of these tents on this island, and each one had offered something different. So I was in the comedy tent. But on the way over there, you took a small boat. I was like, this is amazing. They boat me over, and I'm like, I'm college age. I get over there. I'm like, I'm single. There's all these college kids. There's fucking chicks everywhere. I'm like, this is going to be amazing. Not only am I getting paid, but I'm allowed to also stay all night on the island until the last boat brings people back. So I could stay all night and day. I'm going to drink for free. I'm going to eat. I'm going to go into the hip hop tent and fucking twerk it up. You know, I'm going to grind on somebody. I'm going to get wasted. I'm going to enjoy myself as a single, 19-year-old. We begin the show, and I do a song that I always did. It was a good song. It was a very deep song. It was called "I Converted a Lesbian." Yeah, it was one of my hits. It was an insensitive song about how I took a lesbian and I made her like boys. And it had immature lyrics, like describing the lesbian, those tropes about a lesbian. Very insensitive and stupid. I was young and stupid and narrow-minded, and this was 15 years ago. More, I've evolved since then, audience. Trust me, I've evolved.
Jonesy, that's going to get cut out. It's just going to be every bad thing you said before that. That's going to be the soundbite.
Jonesy, mid-30s, I would never write a song called "I Converted a Lesbian." Okay, I would never do that. I would write a song called "I've Converted two Lesbians." No. Jeez, I converted a transitional person.
That's the sequel.
That's the sequel. A trans person has been converted. Yeah. Look, I'm not proud of this bit, but this song used to crush in Massachusetts so this was I was just trying to get laughs as a young comic. I'm under a year. You know how it is, Dan. You just want to get laughs on stage, and when you're new, you don't care how you get the laugh. You'll lie about yourself. You'll lie about your family. You'll lie about your point of view. You will say anything to get a laugh and get the fuck out of there. You feel the pressure to I'm just going to get laughs. That's what I'm paid to do, and I'll say anything. It doesn't matter if it's true or not, if it's offensive or not, if it's shocking or not. I'll say whatever you guys want. I will dance for 20 minutes, and I will give you what I hope is your money's worth. Now, know your audience, though. That was the problem. Apparently, the organization at the school that was in charge of the comedy tent and who had hired the headliner was the LGBT community. So the LGBT community was in charge of this, running the comedy show, and the LGBT community made up the first 3 or so rows of the comedy show. They were there. They were in there full force. Regular people, regular students in the back, but the LGBT force was there. It was their event. They all sat up front. I didn't know. I'm doing a song now. The headliner didn't tell me this information. I thought just regular college crowd. I had done college crowds before. I had done the lesbian song. Nope, and it got laughs. Well, in this tent, just the booze just started going, man. The booze, and I don't understand why. I have no idea why. I've never experienced it like this before. I'm a new comic. These booze, I just didn't get where it was coming from. This song always crushed, and I'm still going, and I'm still playing, and I'm trying to make it. And they're just people yelling, "Get him off! Get him the fuck off!" And I never in my life have I felt like this. I feel my guitar get pulled like this. The cable gets yanked. And I turn over, and it's the headliner. His name was Harrison, and he pulls on the cord, and I turn on him, and he goes like waving me off right away. I've only done 10 minutes. I'm supposed to do 25 minutes or so. I'm just halfway done my set, and I just okay, and I wrap up the song. I don't even finish the last verse. I just go and thank you, and I'm off stage, and then he comes on, and he crushes, and I go sit in the green room, and I'm sweating. And then I'm waiting, and he just kills and wins everybody over. And then he gets off stage and meets me back in the green room. And then 2 of the representatives from the organization come into it wasn't even a green room; it was just on the outside of the tent they had made a little alcove for us to sit in. And the 2 girls come in and they gave us both an envelope. Thank you for coming. And then one of them points at me and goes, you have to leave this island immediately. We have someone here that's going to escort you off. What you've done today is offensive and it's wrong. And then this long tirade against me. And I just took it. And then my buddy's like, I'm sorry. I I didn't think I needed to tell you that it was LGBT. I forgot that you did a song like that. I just know that you crushed with the guitar. He didn't really know all my songs. I guess he didn't get the greatest hits album, so he didn't. Which I did sell a CD back then, and needless to say, I didn't sell any CDs after that show. Humiliatingly, I had to get on this boat and then just be taken away, just watching the island in the distance, hearing all the sounds of all those young, beautiful women just enjoying themselves, playing beer pong in the barbecue tent, grinding in the R&B tent. And, it just like, I'm just like, wow, all of that fun I'm missing out on as I have to be ferried away from the gig after being screamed at by LGBT people, after offending, many of them, being booed off stage. It was so humiliating, and it was tough to bounce back from that. It really was.
Well, I was just because a follow-up question to that is like, how did you come back? Like, because that definitely has to hurt the ego. Like, that's because it just keeps stacking. You go from, I started getting booed, now I'm not doing good, to getting yanked off early, to then being basically yelled at and then escorted. Like, it just keeps piling.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you say to yourself, if I'm going to come back from this and do this some more, like what has to change is something's got to change. I would imagine a lot of people would just hang it up, right? But I think I would have hung it up earlier than this, because I had some bad on-stage experiences bombing prior to this. Not like this, but I had it before. Anybody who's trying comedy and goes to open mics in the very beginning is going to have bombing experiences.
Oh, absolutely.
Uncomfortable experiences where this is always the beginning of the process, with the exception of Dave Chappelle, who just crushed his first time and then yada, yada. I've seen Hannibal Buress' first set and he destroyed. There's a few cases where it happens, but most of us don't. Most of us eat it, and then we question, this is rough. Could I continue to do this? We deal with that early on, probably the first month, probably within your first 10 shows, you're probably questioning your whole existence, and if you have a place in this world, in this industry. So I had already gotten over that hump. This was a new hump for me. And, I just sort of looked at my material differently, said to myself, wow, okay, some of this stuff is offensive to people. And if they're paying me, they don't want to hear it. They won't want to hear it. I dumped that lesbian song, which was it was a creation that came out of immaturity and narrow-mindedness and, just kind of being a frat boy, kind of having a frat boy mindset, that kind of sense of humor.
Yep.
Just, to defend myself, I was very young. I'm very young. I mean, I was laughing at what I thought was funny, what me and my friends thought were funny, boy stuff.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's important for, comedians, is to have growth, like I remember jokes that I told when I first started, and anytime I think about it, I'm like, oh, so bad. Why did I can't believe I wrote that. That's so terrible. And not just terrible because it was a bad joke, but because of, the material where it could have been very offensive or whatever. And I'm just like, I can't believe I even thought like that.
Yeah. And you nail it. I mean, I think most of us, if you continue doing this, you're going to evolve and look back and go, wow, I can't even believe that's what I was writing. That's what I was doing. It's all part of the growth process, right? Not just the growth process as an artist, but becoming more of an awakened human being. Yep. You know what I mean? Like I would never at this point make fun of someone for their sexual orientation. I just wouldn't do it. And not that I even made fun of anybody in the song. I never made fun. In fact, in the song, I was in love with the lesbian and I just wanted her to love me back. It was an the essence of it was innocent, but I didn't have the artistic skills to make it poetic whatsoever. Therefore, it was just crass, and then that became offensive itself. The message was love, but the way that I delivered it, it was the way the song was structured in the lyrics, it just was very crass. But I had done so just to get the laughs. I'm like, oh, here's a line that'll be funny. Because lesbians wear work boots, or some stupid shit like that. In my naivete, let me throw that in there to get a laugh, because I can't go without laughs. I got to keep hitting them. And so I was putting these insensitive remarks in there. But at the end of the day, the song was about love, but I didn't have the skills to pull it off. My sense of humor was immature. My point of view was immature in life. I've grown since then, of course. But yeah, I cringe to look at those, listen to those. I won't listen to those songs anymore. Except for, Soup of the Day, which was a parody I wrote for U2's Beautiful Day. I loved Soup of the Day, I mean, imagine, 20 different kinds of soups being chucked into a song. It was hilarious. Minestrone! I mean, imagine how funny that is. So, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous, but I can see where how it would be funny. I mean.
Yeah. If you don't want the clam chowder, you can sure have the corn chowder. I mean, that song is great for children, still to this day, probably. But some of those other tracks from my early days were insensitive. And in my defense, also, I'm a white dude from Boston that, fucking A, man.
I'm already crass. That just came from being from Boston.
I come from a place where we have to grow out of our narrow point of view, and we have to grow out of our relatives or have racist tendencies, and we have to grow out of that. It took me a while to get my point of view correct. I moved to New York City for 10 years and experienced the utmost of diversity that you could probably experience. And experiences like that helped me develop as a human being. But back then, at 19 or so, I had many flaws in my point of view and my lack of involvement as a human being.
Yeah, I totally understand that and see that. And I feel like that's where it's like, with all the you kind of have the cancel culture and things like that go around where it's like, because like for an example, you keep saying in your defense, you're like, in my defense, I was 19. Well, you're right. You're 19. You shouldn't have to have, you're owning your issue. You shouldn't have to be like, in my defense, because you've outgrown that, where it's more of it should just be, it was a thing that happened. I was immature. And here I am now, I finally realized it over the years, you know what I mean? Like that's where we're at as a society, where it's like, I have to, defend myself, or people just come at you, even though you've already, made, growth and change and, things like that.
Yeah. I mean, you nailed it right there. That's something that we have to deal with. And sure, I feel like I have to be defensive, like you say, because of the pressure currently, I think, in the culture that makes me have to defend this. But at the end of the day, I was young and stupid, and I shouldn't have to. But I think the culture's become less permissible of that. They don't want to hear an excuse. They want you to get the manual right when you come out of the womb and get it right and get all your words correct and get your point of view correct. And I think that's a lot of pressure to put on a human being growing up in the U.S., which is a place where a lot of people are stupid. And depending on the vagina that you pop out of, that's your socialization. The vagina that you pop out of, whatever backyard that happens to be, there's your socialization, pops. So good luck. You might have some no mask wearing piece of shit who believes the earth is flat, downloading your software, and of course you're going to have a fucked up point of view. Of course you're going to say fucked up things. You're going to be crass and insensitive. You're going to be insensitive to people based on sexuality or race or ideology or whatever. You just came out into the world in the midst of stupidity. You don't have a shot. You don't have a shot. You got to move away. You got to get out of there. I don't think we give people a rope, though, at this point. We really don't.
Yeah, it's easy to forget that we really are all products of the environment where we grew up. It's people don't take any of that into consideration, like with anything really when it comes to politics or, whether the earth is flat or round or any of this. Like, people just like, you're wrong, I'm right, and vice versa. There's no, I can understand their point of view because of where they, were raised, and that's what they knew, and as an example that I use for this is like, comedy has really introduced me to a lot of diversity, and I've grown as a person because of comedy. And had I not did comedy, I would probably be a very ignorant person when it comes to racial issues, because I grew up in a very undiverse area. I had a conversation on this podcast with my buddy Dewey Bratcher about this. There was like one African American family at my school my whole the whole time I was in high school. That's how whitewashed it was, and I could see if I kept living in that, I could see where I could have been very ignorant on a lot of things, and we forget that. Well, that's how some people are raised, and the good news is people can change. But you have to give them time and kind of, we kind of have to hold their hands to get them, to the change.
And consequently, I think the culture has to be a little bit forgiving and allow the change as well.
Absolutely.
Not that you need to be handed a bottle of champagne for changing your racist ways, but if you can change and you do it and you get through it and you admit it, whether it's on Twitter or whatever the hell, I mean, I think people still don't give you a break enough.
I could definitely see that.
Yeah, I think so.
I think a lot of it too, like especially in our society now, is because of everything is at the tip of our fingers with technology, like that instant gratification, and that's what we want. Everything instant, and it doesn't matter what it is. If somebody does something wrong, you want them to instantly change, and that just isn't human nature. It's not possible to just instantly change. We're not a computer program. We can't just be reprogrammed instantly and then,
And at the same time, they'll indict you even though you have changed for some mistake that you've made in the past. Maybe you did a sketch in blackface back in 1998 or something. And then and then now it's been 10 years, it's been 20 years, and you're not a person that would ever do that. Do they? I don't think they're not really quick to forgive you. I don't think this is a barrier to relationships. This is a barrier to a lot of things. It's a barrier to progress. It's a barrier to communication. It's a shame. It's a shame. People make it their full-time job too. It's so annoying to just sort of look for such things and to take other individuals down. I don't know. Is this so helpful? I don't know. They have a term for this. What is it? Social justice warrior.
Yep.
I guess it's on some level it's fruitful to have such a role in our culture, but these roles aren't sanctioned. It's like you are a social justice warrior if you just start bashing people on your Twitter account. And so if you want to establish yourself as a social justice warrior, there's no limits to what you'll do and say and where you'll go and how far back you'll dig into somebody's career or history or whatever. And although they may be a changed person now, you'll be the first person to point out that back in the day they were such and such, and I'm a social justice warrior, and aren't I doing some good to the culture to point this out to you, this behavior that happened in 2002? Is this helpful? I don't think this...
It's definitely unhealthy, I feel like, to a lot of... even the people doing it. I mean, even an example of this is, Biden announced his running mate, and people are already going back into her history and, bashing her for all kinds of stuff. And that isn't even a social justice warriors. That's just the way Americans are these days, is like, we got to find a reason to, cancel these people. We just don't want it, and it's like, and then it ends up getting to where the truth ends up getting, exaggerated, the whole telephone type of thing. And it's, well, this person said this and then this. And then by the time it gets to somebody else's ears, it's not even the same thing,
And, and what's being passed around are very small bites of information, memes, really. And, and one thing you don't do with a meme is dig any deeper. You just keep passing it along. Why should I go find references for this information? Why should I see if it's what are rules of evidence after all? I mean, who cares? Isn't it just more fun to retweet this? It's a very edgy title.
Don't get me started. Oh man, I get so annoyed at some of the memes and things that I've seen. I'm like, it literally takes you 2 seconds to Google that to see how much of that is real or not. Like we all have Google at our fingertips for the most part. Right. It's like you could. I get so frustrated because I see so many, and I have, like I said, I come from a red state. I grew up in South Dakota. I see a lot of ignorance, and I see a lot of people that share the, memes and stuff that are only half truths, if they're true at all, and it's very, very annoying to me.
Let me ask you this, Dan. We don't, as a culture, we don't seem to separate the artist from the person. This is what cancel culture is really coming down to. I will not separate the artist from the person. I will not separate the artist's work from the person. If the person is a piece of shit, I don't care how transcendent the art is, right? You're done. You're done. Your art is now valueless. It contributes nothing to the culture. In fact, it contributes the opposite. It's a reminder of what a piece of shit you are as a person. Therefore, done. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I really have mixed feelings on that. I go kind of back and forth on that internally because, at some level it's like, okay, I get where people don't want to have anything to do with this person's art because they were a shitty human, and that's part of them being punished. But then on the other side of it is, it's all, I mean, it changed, whatever particular art form it is, it's like, they revolutionized that art. So how can you say just because they're, they did a bad thing as a human, what about the good stuff that they did? Is there no balance? I mean, you could take that into politics, with politicians and presidents. And there's a lot of our founding fathers did a lot of shitty things. But if it wasn't for them, we also wouldn't be in a democracy type of situation that we're in. There's all these. It's almost like balance, there's got to be, it's like good and evil. You got to have good and bad with kind of everything. Like there's balance, nobody's perfect and nobody will ever be perfect.
Do you think that they're being held up to this standard of you must be a perfect all around person in all aspects of your life?
I honestly think so. I think that's a lot of where cancel culture comes from, is it's people wanting to hold other people up to a certain standard that is impossible to reach, because we're all human. We all make mistakes. It's exactly what we were talking about with your story and talking about that song. That's something that you wrote out of immaturity 15 years ago. But if somebody really wanted a gun for you, they'd be like, well, he wrote this offensive song and blah, 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 and whatever. And that's all they'll focus on, is that one bad thing, and they won't even mention how you sat here and admitted, it was such an immature song. I totally understand why it was offensive, and I understand what I did. And, you're totally, you've totally kind of come to amends with it, where you're like, you're very aware of it. You've definitely, you've grown from it. You made a mistake. You saw the mistake, how it affected other people, and you consciously made the decision to change. Like that's the other thing that people forget, is that it takes a change, but it's a choice to change. It's not, you don't just change over time. I mean, people do slowly, but you have to choose to change however it is. And I feel like that gets lost so much on people where we forget that we're all human and we all have feelings, and we all, we feel things, and we have good days, we have bad days. Sometimes we're happy, sometimes we're moody, sometimes we're pissy, sometimes we say things out of anger, like all these things. And it's not just one person, it's everybody from, you're a common blue collar worker to the most famous person in the world. At the end of the day, we're all human. And that, to me, I feel like it's just been lost, especially with celebrities and artists. They get held to a higher standard where, well, you got to be perfect. And that perfection is projected on them by fans. That's, it's not them trying to act perfect. You could have somebody go up and admit and be like, I'm a shitty person. I do shitty things, and go do shitty things and totally own what they've done and have art. And then suddenly their fans are like, you are perfect. And then they're held to the standard where, oh shit, now I've got to be perfect, but I'm not. I told you that at the very beginning of this journey, I'm a shitty person. That's what got me here, is being shitty.
I've talked about this before. There's something else that might be happening here. I don't know. Tell me what you think. I'm curious of your opinion on this. Celebrity you mentioned, and I think you're right. I think we can categorize this overall as these are celebrities that are being torn down.
Yep.
Do you think one of the reasons is because, well, firstly, we're getting a glimpse into celebrities' lives like we never have before. Because of social media and whatnot.
Yep.
So, nobody heard about the stories of Bing Crosby beating the shit out of his wife. Nobody knew Rock Hudson was gay, right? We couldn't find this out. But now, all of this stuff is available. You can really find personal lives are now, it's very, it's very, very.
Oh, yeah, it's right there. And not to mention with technology, it's, very hackable and,
right.
where we keep our data and stuff. Yeah.
So that's going on. Yep. Also, we have more celebrities than we've ever had. Are they now rather disposable? Now, listen, so it's like this. You're Kevin Spacey. You're a very good actor. Well, guess what? There's a billion TV shows and a billion movies and a billion other actors, okay? So if you still want to be part of this crew, you also have to be a good person. Otherwise, fuck off. There's plenty of talent to go around. I'm not going to watch your shit. I'll watch other shit. Mel Gibson, I don't need your movies, bro. I don't need your movies. There's a million other directors. There's a million other actors. There's a million other chunks of entertainment that I can take in now. There's plenty of other celebrities. So now you better up your game. You want to be a celebrity? You also have to be a good person. Otherwise, fuck it. You're not allowed. You're not in the club. We're all kicking you out. What about that?
Oh, I could definitely see where that's a thing. I mean, but it still goes to choices, though. Like as far as, this is where, separating the artist from the artist, I get that. But, if a person's being shitty, I totally get why they, especially in certain cases, like you mentioned, Kevin Spacey, the whole Me Too movement, like some of this shit needed to come to the surface and it needed to be cleaned up because it was bad. But it's like, the whole concept of, disposability, I totally see that. Like, because really we are like, and that even goes down to the like corporate blue collar jobs. Like we're all disposable. For every, there's somebody willing to take your place in a role, whether it be at a job, at some company or acting in some movie or directing a movie or telling jokes, it's just, and that kind of goes with like with stand-up, how, like you have all these stand-ups, an industry that really hasn't upped its pay since the 80s, like unless you're selling out shows and you have drawability and you can kind of make your own demands for pay, which is basically your A-list comics and, maybe a few below that, the pay hasn't really did anything. And that's because everybody that produces shows knows that, well, if this guy says no, there's 100 that'll do it for nothing, so I don't have to pay that. So there's definitely a lot of disposability in entertainment industry. And not to mention, everybody's trying to be famous. I mean, you look at social media, you look at, TikTok or Instagram, every regular person is suddenly thinks they're a celebrity. You see these people talking on their Instagram stories like they have 1 million followers, and they might have 5 followers, but it's a weird, I don't know, a social, I don't know if it's, I'm almost like a mental illness, but not not like a severe mental illness, but it's like a kind of an underlining mental illness where people think, oh, I'm a celebrity and blah, 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 and I'm exciting. And, and because of that just even adds more fuel to that whole disposability because everybody now thinks they're a celebrity.
100%. And you can reach them. So now when we think you're a piece of shit, we're like, you're the target. There we go. Bam. Bam. We're going to hit you with it. You could never tell Bing Crosby that he was a wife beater. You just couldn't, unless you went to a Bing Crosby concert and stood in the front row. It was like, you're a wife beater.
And of course, nobody would have heard you because of the screaming fans and music surrounding you.
That's right.
Yeah. You definitely, and that's another. You would have to be in a situation where you were at his house witnessing it to be able to call it out. It's I definitely think social media has played a big part in this because you're right. You're a lot of celebrities, and it's not just celebrities. It's like I said, everybody thinks they're a celebrity. There's a celebrity mentality with anybody that has social media, and we're just like, oh, look at my life. This is a back or behind the scenes look at my everyday life.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's dangerous times.
It really is. I mean, it's like you said, it's hard when people don't. I think the biggest problem is that we're not allowing people to apologize. We're not allowing them to take ownership for the things that they did, and to apologize, all of that. And there's nobody regulating anything. Like when somebody does something wrong, what's the punishment? You're just like, you're canceled. You're not allowed to come back to acting. What, forever? Person's not supposed to work and make a living and try to survive like everybody else. Like what? What's the limits? Who says this? Who dictates how many years somebody should be, punished for, or vice versa? There's no courts for this kind of thing.
That's right. I guess, some of these people still have fans even after all of that, like Louis C.K. and will sell tickets still.
Yep.
You just hope at the end of the day you walk away from the fight with a way to still put food on your table. If you can, that little amount of people who still like your art and they don't care what you've done. Louis C.K.'s stand-up, I will always love his stand-up comedy. He's been an inspiration for me as a comedian. I think he's an unbelievable comedian, stand up.
Yeah.
And I even like the show. I even loved that show that was on FX. I thought that was a great show. I really like it. And there was nothing like it, and I love the show. So I like his art. Do I like him as a person? Not really. But I like his art. And, he's somebody I would, if I don't pay for comedy anymore, but if I was Louis C.K., I would still I'd go see his show. And so at the end of the day, he can walk away and still feed his family, feed himself. Not everybody has this luxury.
No, that's for sure. Well, and and that's a really good example of all this because he does have fans. Like people, and whether or not those fans separate the artist from the art, it doesn't matter in the sense that if he does a show, he's going to probably sell out still. He still does. Like people still buy tickets to go see him, when he does shows. So, but whether or not people are separating the art from the artist, that's a whole nother thing. And I don't think regular people necessarily do. I think, I feel like when it comes to cancel culture and things like that, and you have some people that are just regular fans that are like, oh, well, he did this, I'm not going to, have anything to do with him. But then I think about it like, would they had anything to do with this artist to begin with? Did they did they even like him before? Now they have even more of a reason not to like this person and their art. So
and of course the what seems to me is, I don't know, but probably the people that are at the forefront of the cancel culture, they don't like anybody or anything. They're just like,
well, no, and that's because that's what gives them their quote unquote life. Like that's what they're living for they got such a negative life that they're living to bring somebody down. And it goes back to the expression, misery longs for company. That's really what it boils down to. Miserable people hate seeing other people, being more successful for them. They get bitter and then they try to bring them down, and it's any means possible, but at the end of the day, I guess the way I feel about it is just try to be not a shitty person. You can only do we're not perfect, but you can at least try to be a good person, the most you can.
Yeah.
And hope the few times you make some mistakes, they don't come back and bite you in the ass. But they probably will.
I only wrote one song about converting lesbians, okay? All right? Just one. I didn't write a whole damn, concept album about it. Like I'm the Who. A double album.
It wasn't like a soundtrack to Chasing Amy or something.
I love that movie.
It was a great movie. That's a great movie.
Chasing Amy. Kevin Smith, baby.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh man, that's great.
Well, Dan, I gotta get some dinner.
Okay.
But this was fabulous. I enjoyed this talk. I hope your listeners.
Oh yeah, they will.
Like
you got time to do just a couple quick things?
Yeah, let's do it.
We'll go real quick. I always like asking this question: the bumming of bombing, the dreadful feeling. How long does that typically last? And I know you've been doing comedy for a while, so I really like, how has that changed over the years for you?
Well, I never bombed that bad since then. I mean, I never had people standing up and pointing and going, "Remove him from the stage." I mean, that's like something that happens in nightmares. Now, I know enough to know why it's happening if I bomb for the most part, so I'm able to. I feel more comfortable bombing because I've bombed so many times. You get sort of comfortable with the silence, but also you get smarter. You don't get off the stage anymore and go, "Oh fuck, I should just quit. I'm terrible." I go, no, I know I'm not terrible. What went on there? Was it was because the show was in the afternoon? Was the afternoon? Is it because the guy before me was really dirty? Is it because I'm in Utah? Like, what is going on here? Like, I'll explore I'll think about what the other factors might be, and I won't dwell on it. I'll just say, okay, well, this is probably what was going on. I still believe in myself. I still know that this material, for the most part, works. And I move on. I don't dwell on it like that. I just keep in mind, like, whatever had happened that seemed to trigger the strange reaction from the crowd, the displeasure. I'll just try and pinpoint what that might be and be aware of it next time and try and figure out a way and think about what could I have done to avoid that. And then next time, I remember I'm going to try this to avoid avoid this situation again, and try. Let me try this to be liked.
Yep.
Even if it's just smile more. It could be something like that.
That's huge. That's something I've about myself that I realize. I'm like, I need to smile more.
Yeah, well, I mean, what people don't get is, these jokes after you tell them 150 times, it's hard to smile. It's like, it just becomes hard. And so sometimes you got to snap yourself out of it. Remember, although I've said this 150 times, they've never heard it. Let me pretend as though it's the first time. And I would, and so those little adjustments, that's what I'll usually try to do. And be mindful of that. Try and figure out what the hell happened. You got to record every show, of course. I think that helps. And don't be so averse to your own critique either. If it's you, if it's something that it's not always the crowd or the situation. Sometimes it's you. Like, man, I was going too fast there? Was I in a shitty mood before I went on stage? Did I have a couple shots and I shouldn't have been? I was a little tipsy, and there's sometimes it's you as well. So you got to be open to that.
Oh, absolutely, totally agree with that. Okay, one fun thing: do you have a pre-show ritual or tradition?
No, really? I don't. Is that lame? Do most people?
I mean, some people don't. I mean, no. This is something kind of a newer question I've been asking comics, just because I'm just kind of curious myself.
Well, you've probably gotten some fascinating answers too.
I've had some, but a lot of people are kind of like, they really have to think about it, and then they're like, oh wait, I guess I kind of do. I do this or this or that. They don't even realize it's so programmed into a show, that they don't even realize that they have that. That was interesting was that they didn't really have a pre-show tradition, but they had a post-show tradition, and it had to do with the kind of music they would listen to after the show. If it went well, it would be something fun or whatever, or and then if it was bad, it'd be a different playlist or whatever. So which is kind of interesting.
Not before the music afterward, as a reward, so to speak.
Yeah. Yep.
That's funny.
Something like that. Yeah.
I don't really ever do that. If I'm not feeling the energy, I'll maybe half a cup of coffee.
Yeah. Yep.
Half a cup of coffee. Yeah.
get the energy up there.
Or
I've definitely did that.
Half a Red Bull. Like I won't do the whole thing because then I'll just be too But half a dose. If I'm feeling low energy, half a dose of caffeine. 30 milligrams, let's say, is enough to like, oh, okay, here I go. A little bit of that. That could be a thing if I'm feeling low energy. But yeah, overall, no. Anything else? Those are fascinating questions.
Yeah. So the last thing I like to do, because I know you got to get going, so I'm going to skip a couple questions, but I like to end with a fun thing called pick a number. You pick a number between 1 and 20, and I'm going to ask you a corresponding question.
14.
14. All right. Do you ever stop and think about the number of butts in the world?
Jeez, no, I never have. You realize ants and spiders have butts, right? I mean, can you imagine? I mean, it's just like, wow.
Yeah.
And ants and spiders have butts.
Yeah. It was funny. That question came up before, and we were talking, and they're like, "Man, there's a lot of humans and blah blah blah." And I was like, "Yeah," and you didn't even factor in animals.
Yeah, the animals have butts.
So many butts.
Those baboons. What are those monkeys with the crazy butts? Those butts exist. Yeah. How many of those butts? There's probably a few thousand of those butts too. Those butts are like, they give me nightmares. I never thought about that before in my life.
You're gonna leave this now. You're gonna go eat your dinner, and you're just gonna be like, I wonder how many butts there really are.
Well, this is very good news if you're an ass man. It's like,
right.
Hey.
Very true.
You could always just, bask in the thought that there's so many asses out there, man. So many. Because, if you're a tit guy, there's only mammals have tits, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, pretty much.
But there's so many butts. I mean, even insects have butts. So, like, really, everything's got a butt. Does an amoeba have a backside? Probably. I mean, so, yeah, it's good. It's good if you're an ass man. That's nice. I really like that thought.
All right.
I was gonna say you should write a whole like bathroom book of that.
Right, just people answering one question.
Have you ever thought like what? Fucking Dan? What the hell is this? Yeah, well, Dan is right. I never thought about it.
I thought this was a comedy podcast. Now we're talking about butts, but it's funny.
I love it.
Where can people find you? Go ahead and play your social media.
Well, yeah, I just at this point because I don't have any shows in the calendar. I usually just tell people to listen to me on my podcast, which I record 5 days a week.
Okay, perfect.
Weird AF News. You can hear it on any of your podcast players. I do Weird News 5 days a week, and on Friday I only do Weird News out of Florida. So if you like degenerate Florida stories, then Florida Friday is for you. So yeah, Weird News, which I always tell people, it's a nice break from mainstream news, which really pisses you off these days, puts you in a bad mood. Weird AF News, I put you in a good mood. It's weird, funny news stories with a comedian's spin on it. And, I'm not always hilarious on each story, but most of the news is very weird and funny. And I think people appreciate that, especially nowadays when mainstream news is just so depressing.
Oh, absolutely. I can totally see where that would be entertaining. Well, thank you so much, Jonesy, for joining me.
Thank you so much, Dan. I had a great time. This was a great conversation. I hope your listeners appreciated this and enjoyed the comedy shop talk.
The Art of Bombing is a Blitzed Entertainment production. Hosted and produced by Dan Bublitz Jr., The Art of Bombing intro music was written and performed by John Holt. All other music used in this podcast was under the Creative Commons license. If you would like to help The Art of Bombing, you can do so by subscribing, rating, and reviewing our show on whatever podcast application you use to listen to The Art of Bombing. For previous episodes, blogs, and more, visit artofbombingpod.com. Have a great week, and remember, stay safe so you can live to love.